The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, a sunny but cold day here in Southern California. It's Tuesday. Yesterday was D-Day for the Los Angeles Lakers, a stunning turn of events. Everyone thought they were going to hire Phil Jackson. I thought they were going to hire Phil Jackson. I went to bed on Sunday night. I woke up on Monday morning. They hired Mike D'Antoni. On the phone right now, Grantland's Zach Lowe. Zach, you wrote about this already, but let's rehash your opinions for a podcast.
I was as shocked as you. I woke up early Monday and was told that I needed to write something about Mike D'Antoni being hired, and took a double take and started to think hard about it. I was as surprised as anyone else. I saw some reporters at the Nets game on Sunday. We were talking about this, and a couple had prior connections to LA and that general market, and they, everything they were hearing was that it was just like a matter of hours until Phil cinched it.
This is like one of those stories that I think like 3 weeks from now will make for an awesome 5,000-word magazine feature, like a Vanity Fair style, because there's so many components to it. First of all, you have the Phil Jackson Jimmy Buss part, which basically is brother-in-law. He dates Jim Buss's sister. So obviously they don't have the greatest relationship, because the way this was handled was a little bit of an FU to Phil, but yet the guy is dating Jim Buss's sister. So I think that part's really strange. Then the part that, all right, let me ask you, why would they fire Mike Brown when they didn't have a backup plan yet? Why do you think they did it after 5 games?
I mean, if you look at what they did, firing a guy 5 games into a season when the point guard they got to run the offense they just installed has basically not played, it's crazy, and it suggests that they probably should have started this process as soon as they got eliminated from the playoffs last year, for the exact reasons that you state, so this doesn't turn into a cluster,
Yeah.
With all, if you do it in April or May, you get your ducks in order. You have time to talk to Phil. You have time to look at the market and see what you want to do. And to fire a guy after 5 games, when again that one of the greatest point guards ever, who you brought in to run this brand new offense that you just installed, has basically not played. It's just crazy.
And then on top of it, here's my theory. I think that they had some sort of feeler out to Phil. They knew that Phil was sitting there. Phil didn't want to make it seem like he undercut Mike Brown. So they were like, all right, we'll talk to Phil, whatever, and we won't just say right away that he's the coach. But once Phil had that leverage, and now everyone's claiming that this didn't happen, but I just think it did happen, because something had to have happened over the weekend. Phil knew he had the leverage and probably asked for a whole bunch of crazy stuff. I don't think he totally ever wanted to coach again. I went to lunch with the guy 2 years ago, and it just seemed to me like a guy who had reached the end of the line and just didn't want to do the grind of not just dealing with the schedule and the travel and sitting on the bench, but even, dealing with Kobe as Kobe was hitting a different part of his career. So for me, it seemed like Phil was just saying, well, I'll do this, but, I need this, and this, assuming they were going to say yes. And then for whatever reason, Jimmy Buss said, yeah, screw that. Let's go with D'Antoni. Does that seem plausible to you?
It does. I mean, the reporting coming out of LA has been weirdly divided between, Phil asked for the world as an FU to Jim Buss, and Phil asked for just reasonable stuff and no equity and no organizational control, which suggests that there's a lot of competing agendas that are trying to get stories out to the guys that are on the ground over there. But yeah, I mean, like you say, it just there aren't that many sort of Laker-worthy candidates available for the job mid-season, early in the season, and you would suspect that an organization that has been well run under the Buss family for almost, its entire existence would not make such a dramatic decision without knowing they had someone in the bag or being 90% sure they had, one of the only candidates available in the bag. And maybe they thought, we haven't reached out to D'Antoni, but we're pretty sure he'll take the job because he wants to coach again. And that's a good backup, but I don't know that that's the case.
And then on top of that, if you had somebody in the bag, this would be a nice guy to have in the bag, somebody who is dating a member of the owner's somebody who's dating the owner's daughter, basically. That's somebody you can trust with the information. Hey, we're thinking of firing Mike Brown. What do you think of this? Would you potentially come back? Yeah, I have to say maybe I would. Okay, well, we're going to fire him. Then you go to him. All right, so what salary are you thinking? Then he throws out all these crazy things and it falls apart. The other weird thing is, from a timing standpoint, it didn't seem like they wanted to play games 6 and 7 with Mike Brown because those were two of the easiest games in the schedule for them. And all that, if they win those two games and then lose to San Antonio tonight, then they fire him. Now you've lost a whole other week of trying to find a coach. So it almost seemed like they were being preemptive. Did you feel that?
Well, that was the weird part is that, the first story that came out was Stein saying, citing sources saying he's got the homestand to essentially save his job. And you looked at that homestand and you thought, he can do that. They should be okay on this homestand. There are some bad teams coming in, Golden State's missing Andrew Bogut, the Kings are the Kings, whatever. He could save his job. And then all of a sudden, like 2 hours later, he was canned. And it was weird now that you bring it up that they just, that maybe they wanted to get it done before the Lakers are sitting there at 3-5 or 4-6 or something that is like borderline acceptable.
And then on top of that, you have, Mike Brown getting blamed for putting the Princeton offense in. Somebody sent me this great link of a whole article that Yahoo had at the end of July, about how Kobe pushed for the Princeton offense. And he had spent all this time with Eddie Jordan and had talked Mike Brown into doing this and it'd be great for this. There's all these Kobe quotes about how great the offense is going to be. And then I didn't even know this. I thought this was Mike Brown's idea to do this offense. I had no idea this was Kobe was the impetus for this offense. So Kobe convinces the coach to put in an offense that then gets blamed within 5 games after the season started of getting him fired. That's pretty strange.
Yeah, that was a Woj article, and Woj is tight with a lot of people around the NBA, but he's tight with Kobe. We know that, and I remember that piece, and yeah, I mean, it certainly painted. I mean, Kobe was saying, this is my idea. I want something that's like the triangle, and our offense wasn't consistent enough last year. It was too scripted. It wasn't read and react enough, and I think this is going to be a good idea. And now, Eddie Jordan, he's just twiddling his thumbs. He waits for what the hell is going to happen to him.
It's totally bizarre. And then you have the part where Mike D'Antoni, who has, we think, a phenomenal relationship with Nash. I know Nash loved playing for him. And then he has this long history with Kobe, dating back to when Kobe was like a kid and watched him play in Italy. And Kobe, the first number he wore was D'Antoni's number. So there's that. He dealt with Dwight, obviously, with the Olympic team in '08. Gasol. I mean, wouldn't you say Gasol would be, if you're looking about the dream D'Antoni offense, Gasol would be maybe the best ever version of what Boris Diaw did for them that one year. On paper, this makes a lot of sense. I don't know why the Laker fans don't totally see that. It was like they were just totally enamored by the concept of Phil coming back. Do you think D'Antoni's a better fit for them than Jackson?
I mean, probably not. Phil is Phil. He has 11 rings. He knows the market. He knows Kobe. He has everyone's trust. And Gasol, I think, is probably better even for the triangle than he is for the D'Antoni offense, just because, he can't shoot threes like Diaw. He's not sort of an off-the-dribble guy who can attack in space like Diaw. I actually think the Lakers have some serious spacing issues because, to me, Gasol is this, and we've talked about this. Gasol is a center, and he's playing with another center. And without Odom there to sort of break that up, not that they could use the current version of Odom, obviously, but without Odom there to break that up, like they used to, finish down the stretch with Odom, Gasol. That was their front line. And so they have some serious spacing issues. Like Phil gets the benefit of the doubt if you're comparing them head to head because because he's Phil. At the same time, I think Mike D'Antoni is a very, very good coach. And, watching them run the Princeton and these slow old guys cutting and screening for 16 seconds of the shot clock, you would just want to scream at the TV, just run a pick and roll with Nash and Howard, or just give the ball to Gasol in the post against Jay Crowder or something like that. And if we build around Nash and Howard, I think they'll be, they can figure everything else around that.
The stats weren't as bad as people thought about how their offense. So what were they, sixth? Something like that in those 5 games?
They were sixth, but they had 2 really good games, including just a destruction of the Pistons, and 3 really bad ones. I mean, it was a problem. It was a problem.
Yeah. For me, it was more of an eye test thing. It just didn't feel right when you watched it. And, I love using stats. I love reading them. I love seeing whether they're confirming what I see or maybe they don't confirm what I'm watching. But in this case, the team just didn't look right, and it didn't look like the right offense. Nash not being there, didn't help. But when you look forward with this team, first of all, this is a little more dysfunction than I think we've seen with the Lakers, maybe since the heyday of the whole Shaq Kobe thing when that blew up. It really strange to me how they handled this. I know, Jerry Buss we haven't heard from, and I know he's been in the hospital, and I don't think he's in the best health. And it does seem like this was a Jim Buss production. I wonder, if you just look at the landscape of this team and all these contracts they have coming up. Kobe, is going to make $30 million next year. Gasol's in the last year of his contract next year. Howard's a free agent this year. The way they handled this makes me wonder, could this be the first sign that maybe the Lakers aren't as stable of a franchise as they used to be in the past? What do you think?
I don't even think it's the first sign. I mean, it was crazy how aggressively Jim Buss just purged everything that Phil Jackson had ever touched from that organization, knowing that it was going to alienate Kobe, knowing that it was going to make people say, what the hell is going on there? Why is there this power play? Why is Ronnie Lester out? Why is the training staff and the video guy, why are they out? Not all the training staff, obviously Gary Biddy is still there. But, why are all these changes happening? And this is sort of, a year later or whatever, we're seeing some sort of similar weird power play dynamics, playing out, and we'll see what happens. I mean, this season is when is Nash going to come back? He has a freaking broken leg. When is Howard going to start playing defense like himself? I mean, we're going to be 30 games into the season before you know it, and it's are they going to look like the team that anyone thought they would be?
And they have no bench whatsoever. That's I don't think any of us realized that Jameson was going to be this old, for lack of a better word. I thought Jameson was going to be good for them, and they just have no young legs, which makes me think if they have to make a move, if there's a win now mentality, and I think there is, especially because Howard's going to be a free agent, and you definitely don't want to screw up this season because he could just leave. It makes me wonder, could Gasol be traded? And we know there's a very easy trade that makes a lot of sense sitting out there. Josh Smith, Kyle Korver, Johan Petro's contract coming to LA for Gasol. Atlanta would save $2.7 million. They wouldn't have to worry about re-signing Josh Smith this summer, which who knows if they can or they can't. They'd have Gasol under contract for this year and next. I don't know if they're better with that trade, but I think it's a really fair haul for Josh Smith. Would you make that trade if you're Atlanta?
Wow. That would be, I'd have to sit down and look at the cap math. That you put in Jeff Teague's cap hold with Horford and Gasol, and I think you could probably still get something like max cap room if you even want it with Gasol, but it's a little tighter than it would be, otherwise. But I think he's a better player. He's clearly a better player than Josh Smith. But I'm a big I like Josh Smith, even though he's a bonehead. And if you have ambitions of getting any of these big guys, he's friends with Dwight. He's obviously tight with Chris Paul, and I think that they view him as a valuable thing for that reason. But Powell is old. Let's not beat around the bush. He's got a lot of minutes on his legs. I don't know that I want that salary on the books for the next couple of years.
Well, it's this year and next year, and then he's done.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I guess it becomes an expiring contract right away, almost.
Well, then you think like, all right, you're in the Eastern Conference, which is a really small conference for the most part. You suddenly have Gasol and Horford together. You know, think about a team like the Celtics trying to match up with that. The Celtics would have a lot of trouble. You know, I think Miami would have a lot of trouble matching up with that. Both of us watched the incredible Memphis Miami game on Sunday night, which, you know, the first time where the small ball Miami was playing hard in that game. It's the first time where small ball Miami kind of looked at it and went, "Uh-oh. Now here's a team that it almost seemed like a little too big for Miami." If you put Horford and Gasol, you built around that with some of the shooters they have, and Jeff Teague, I like that Atlanta team anyway, but I think that'd be a pretty intriguing team.
That would be a very intriguing team. The thing you like about Smith is they can swing him to small forward and and play bigger in a way they wouldn't be able to do in this Gasol scenario. But I think, you know, at the very least, I think they would be just as good and with a bigger guy in the right matchup and just a smarter player. Smith is a great passer. Obviously, he's a better defensive player, but Gasol is just such a headier offensive player who's not going to waste 5 possessions a night with bad shots. It might be a net win for them.
And then if you put Josh Smith on the Lakers, so I guess he'd be, if you're looking at it like the mid-2000s Suns, Nash is Nash. Josh Smith kind of in that Sean Marion role, right? High-flying, power forward, whatever. Obviously never had anybody like Dwight Howard on those Suns teams. And then Kobe also really had no, I guess maybe Joe Johnson that first year, but he's, you know, such a different player. But Josh Smith, Nash, and Howard in the D'Antoni offense would be really interesting, especially if they really started running, if Howard's back came back, that would be a genuinely exciting team.
It would be super exciting, and then Smith, as you say, is much more able to do things off the dribble and you know, slash from the baseline and stuff than Powell is. He also can't shoot, which brings some of the same spacing issues. But it's also possible for him to play a little bit of three if that works better. You know, if Metta World Peace is just a disaster, or just can fill more spots around the floor. But again, the lack of shooting would be a problem, and you know and then. Of course, you go forward and you've got Smith on an expiring contract, White on an expiring contract, Nash is almost 40. You introduce a little more uncertainty long term with that deal.
Yeah, the Lakers love betting on that though, because once people get here, they don't want to leave. The one thing with Dwight, I do think there's a little urgency there because you have 2 real suitors for him this summer. You have the Mavericks, obviously, and then. Yeah, actually, I should say you have 3 suitors, and we found out that he had a crush on Brooklyn. He finally admitted it, and they do have tradable pieces. Like, it's not inconceivable that they could try to get some sign and trade. They made the sign and trade rules a little tougher, but you know, I think Houston has to be considered another possible suitor for him. Especially, I think they have max money this summer.
For Howard, they have to work. It's going to be very hard. I don't know. I'd have to do the math. I mean, they're tight with the Smith level max. They have to drop like a Marcus Morris and maybe even another little piece to get Smith level max. And Howard's deal starts at like $20 million, so it might be tough for them to get in that market.
Yeah, but add this part though. You're not going to have a Sheik and Howard, so you move a Sheik at that point.
True.
You sign Howard, you move a Sheik, and a Sheik has turned into one of the, I think one of the best bargains in the league. The guy's probably going to lead the league in rebounding. He's top 3 or 4 with how he protects the rim. He's got no hands on the other side, but I think
that makes him hilarious to watch.
Yeah,
which adds value for us anyway.
But when you think about some of these extensions that we've seen, you know, like DeMar DeRozan for, what did he get, $40 million?
Yeah.
Even Taj Gibson for $40 million. Ashiq for $24.7 for 3 years was a steal. It's a hijacking. And I think that's one of the most tradable contracts in the league this summer. So the point is, Howard, there's a couple teams that I think, you know, if he didn't want to stay in the Lakers, if the season went terribly, he'd have some options. I mean, I still think the Lakers made the right deal, especially with Bynum's not coming back till January now. So
no, you make that deal in a heartbeat, and I think you got to throw in Atlanta too as a Dwight suitor, given his connections to the area and their potential cap room.
Now, could they re-sign Josh Smith and sign Howard? I think they can, right?
It's difficult, but they'd have to drop Teague, and they may have to even move Lou Williams. That is very close, because once you start adding up the charges for roster spots and stuff, it gets pretty tight. But I think it's doable. I'd have to sit down and do the math. If it's not doable, it's close to doable, depending on what Smith would get. But again, that gives you Smith, Horford, Howard, and I don't know that works that well.
Well, I was going to say that's another team that you have to factor in that they'd probably make a trade. And right. Horford has real value, I think. I think I haven't done my trade value list yet, but he'd be in the top 25 or 30, I would guess. And I'm sure they could flip him into another piece. Do you feel like there's going to be some trades coming up? For some reason, I feel like I'm getting like a trade vibe for these next couple months. You look around at some of these rosters, and it does feel like, put it this way, you can go on the trade machine for 8 hours and really have some fun with some of these rosters.
You could. Depending on how some teams do. I mean, if Toronto falls apart, they're 1-6 and they're going on the road for something like 12 of their next 16 games. They fall out of the playoff race. They've got some pieces. Utah's got a crowded front court.
Yeah.
Memphis looks really good, so that probably takes them out of the trade market. But some of those teams will be aggressive depending on how their seasons go, for sure.
Memphis has. After that Miami game, I actually went on the trade machine to try to figure out, because they feel like they're one player away, and I don't know what happened to Tony Allen this year, but he's not. They're not either. They're using him wrong, or he's not as good, or whatever. But like, he only played 14 minutes on Sunday night. I think he's an expiring at 3.3. They have Spates, who makes $4 million, so you could combine those two and get one more big piece. But you wrote about the Grizzlies, I think, for Grantland today. It hasn't gone up yet, but from what you saw on Sunday night, that's a real contender. Do you agree?
That's the thing. I'm not even sure they're one player away anymore. They were definitely one player away before the Harden trade and before the Lakers went to crap. Not that the Lakers have permanently gone to crap, but they're certainly not we can't just write them in as like a juggernaut.
They're much iffier.
I think Memphis is not one player away. If the conference looks like it does now, they're absolutely a contender to come out. I mean, they could use, a little more consistent scoring punch somewhere on the perimeter, but, if Rudy Gay gets a little better, Mike Conley looks great. They just got to find the right balance between what Tony Allen brings on defense and what the shooters off the bench bring, and divide the minutes the right way on a night-to-night basis. No one ever wants to play Memphis, and if they keep shooting like they're shooting, that's going to be doubly true.
Yeah, the thing that would worry me if I was a Grizzlies fan about that game was Wayne Ellington had like the game of his life, and you're not going to get that every time. That's somebody that got a million chances in Minnesota, and I'd be surprised if he turned into a cog of a real championship contender. It could happen, but if they could shore up that spot with somebody I felt a tiny bit better about, that would make me feel better. But as you said, everybody else got worse. And when the pack drops toward you, I mean, did you watch Oklahoma City last night against Detroit?
I watched maybe like the last 6 or 7 minutes when I saw the game was close.
They finished. Now, it's a little bit of a flawed stat because they went to the free throw line a lot, so that is always going to knock down the assist total. But they had 10 assists for the whole game.
I did see that, and Westbrook had like 2 or 3 or 4, or some very tiny number. But again, they took 1 million free throws.
They took 1 million free throws, so it's a little flawed. But you watch this Oklahoma City team, and it's really like your turn, my turn, his turn, your turn, my turn, his turn. It doesn't feel the same. It just doesn't. And also on top of it, like, you have Westbrook, who's the point guard, who takes 27 shots and 15 free throws, and I mean, he's basically a two guard. He's a two guard who dribbles the ball up. He's not even trying to play point guard anymore. So I don't know really what that team does, because Kevin Martin's playing well for them. It's not like he's playing bad. All the guys individually are playing well, but I don't know collectively how it's going to work.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're 6-2, but they've had a very easy schedule. The good news is that they look pretty good defensively, but again, they've had a very easy schedule. And I'm a little higher on Westbrook than you are. I think he's a much better passer than he used to be, and he just doesn't have any balance. He doesn't have the proper balance to his game. There's 8 or 9 decisions that he makes every night that are wrong and costly, and he makes up for a lot of that with just his sheer talent and explosiveness. But like, there are times where it's like he just can't enter the ball to Kevin Durant posting up. It's like, or he couldn't, like, there was a play down the stretch last night where the play was for him to pass it to Cephalosha and then set that pin down for Durant, which has become their late game crutch, and he like couldn't even enter the ball to Cephalosha, and the whole play got blown up. And it was like, you have that window to throw an entry pass, and he just misses it all the time.
And then he comes up with the biggest rebound of the game. That's the way it gets this huge offensive rebound in traffic and wins the game for him.
Well, that's him.
I love Westbrook. I mean, I'm the guy who wrote the 90% theory column on him. Like, you just have to learn to live with the 10%. The problem is they've put him in a position to fail. I thought the thing that was so great about that team they had last year, and we've discussed this, the Harden was the security blanket and could always kind of step in whenever Westbrook started to get a little wonky. And now they just don't have anybody. And if anything, like, it's put more pressure on Durant, who's kind of had to reinvent himself a little bit more as, like, almost playing the way LeBron plays, where the box scores that he has this year just are starting to look different than the ones he's had in the past. He'll have these games where he'll have 25 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, things like that. It's just put more pressure on him to create. You're higher on Eric Maynard than I am. I just don't think he's good enough. I think if he's playing more than 10 minutes a game for you, that's not a good sign.
Ouch.
They need to do something. They need somebody, some sort of creator, unselfish somebody that's on the perimeter that can kind of take a little pressure off Westbrook, and I don't know who that player is. I mean, I just don't know where they find him.
Yeah, they need Ibaka to be better offensively and more consistent offensively, and he's been pretty good the last couple of weeks. I mean, to me, you talk about putting Westbrook in a position to fail. To me, the best hope for Oklahoma City is internally in terms of what lineups and rotations they use. I mean, their starting lineup is, like, unwatchable. I would rather watch Tayshaun Prince isolate like 20 times in a row on the left wing. Watch any more of that starting lineup. They have 2.5 guys that teams just don't pay attention to.
Yeah.
Nobody moves. It's slow. It's just like they need to just, I don't know. Scott Brooks loves that lineup. It killed them in the finals last year. It kills them now. They can't score. And they've been happily using Durant at power forward more in the last week or so. And maybe that's sort of where the solution lies, juggling minutes a little differently. But, like, Kendrick Perkins is just not a useful player in a lot of games. And they got to find the right mixing, matching of the lineups.
I feel like they're trolling our friend Haralabos when they play Cephalosha, Perkins, and Ibaka all at the same time. It's a clear provocation. Because you're putting 3 guys out there who literally can't create any shot for themselves. And it's so easy to stop. I don't get it. I think it's really confusing. But
and 2 of them can't shoot. I mean, like, they can't create shots, and 2 of them can't shoot. It's like playing 3 Tony Allens.
Right.
You just have to have so much go right to get a good shot, and it's just very hard for them.
It's funny because the Celtics have the opposite problem. They've too often have been putting out multiple guys who can't play defense. They've had you basically put 3 civs out in the court at once, and then you wonder why you're giving up 60% shooting. They had an encouraging game in Chicago, a place that has not been kind to them in recent years. Yesterday, and Pierce looked better. Seems like Doc is still trying to figure out his playing rotation, but as a Celtics watcher, how are you feeling after 2 weeks?
I did not see that game last night, so I can't comment. By the time I flipped over, it was over. So I had a couple other games on DVR, so didn't see that. Happy they won, as you say. The Bulls just kick the crap out of the Celtics all the time in the last couple of years. I'm with you. I mean, it's just very early for a team that has so many pieces and is trying to. I mean, essentially, the Celtics are trying to figure out A, how can we score, and B, how can we survive when Kevin Garnett goes to the bench? Because when KG goes to the bench, it's like they're a D-League team.
Yeah. And
they have to just figure out what they have in Jeff Green, where he should play, whether he's actually this bad, whether the Bass-Sullinger front line is, like, workable and against what matchups it's workable. They're starting Jason Terry all of a sudden. They're just all over the place, and that was going to happen. I mean, it's been a rough. They certainly look very far from being a contender, and worse than I think we thought they would look at this point. But again, it's early, and you got to trust the process with them a little bit.
I thought they were going to be really good, and then I watched that Miami game, and Miami probably could have scored 140 points in that game, and that made me nervous. And the defense, especially when KG's out, it's really hairy to watch them play defense. And this Celtics team, in the glory years, especially in 2008, defense was what made the team. It's weird. Rondo statistically has been fine, and yet I find myself a little bit disappointed with his season so far because I really thought he was going to elevate himself to a whole other level. And here's an example, like LeBron last night, and I tweeted about this. He goes into Houston. They lost the night before, really convincingly to Memphis. And then at halftime, he's like, I'm just not losing 2 in a row. It's just not going to happen. He ends up scoring 32 in the second half, and they gut out the win. Rondo, that's like the last step for him. As if you're really going to be like one of the best 6 or 7 players in the league, you can't take nights off, and you have to show up every night, and especially after a loss. And there's just games where maybe you're not going to totally feel like it, but you're the best player in the team, and you have to have an awesome game because nobody else is playing well, and that's the last step for him. And I haven't totally seen it yet. How are you feeling about Rondo?
I mean, this is what makes him so fascinating, is because you want him to be that player, and then you look at him, and he's not 6'8", and he can't shoot. And it's a little unfair to say he can't shoot because he's shooting really well on mid-range jumpers this year, but he can't shoot threes, and he's good on mid-range jumpers because teams don't guard him. And you add the fact that he's the only guy on that team that can create his own shot consistently. I mean, Jason Terry can do it pretty well. Pierce, they're using more and more just coming off curls, and less as sort of a one-on-one guy. Then you got the bigs who are jump shooters. It's just like he's got to do everything creatively, and there are going to be nights where all those floaters and runners in the lane just don't go in because they're harder shots for him than they are for someone who's 6'8". And he has to work so much harder to get there because no one guards him above the foul line. It's an interesting situation, and I've always wondered sort of how he would do if he were, on his current growth curve and there was another young guy or another peak guy who could create his own shot next to him and take some of that responsibility away. But, look, the Celtics, they look like the Celtics still. They look like a team that's just going to struggle to score. Yeah.
Well, and we sound so disgruntled. They're 4-3. It's not like they stumbled out of the gate. It feels like they're like 9-11. Something like that.
You should get the 2 Wizards wins should count as 1 win.
I guess. Yeah, you're right. And they've somehow 1-2 at home, which is bizarre. But meanwhile, the Knicks. Listen, I don't want to pour water on the whole on how excited the Knicks fans are on this whole thing, but the 4-0 is a little flimsy. I don't think anybody's had an easier schedule these first 2 weeks.
You really hang your hat on the Miami win, and that's it.
Yeah, and that was, it was a weird game. It was a weird vibe to that game, and I got the feeling from Miami that, it was right after the hurricane. It was the first Knicks home game, and I think Miami was in a weird spot. Like, you're going in, you're competing, and yet it's this emotional win for the other team, and you see that happen a lot where the road team almost becomes like 1980 Russia in the Olympic hockey game. It's like, wow, this sucks. Like, they're almost subconsciously rooting for the home team too. I don't think. I put it this way: I don't think the Knicks are going to beat Miami by double digits again this season. I don't see that. But what do you think they do with Amari? I know everybody's talking about this, and he's not going to come off the bench. He has too big of an ego, and yet Amari as a sixth man would make the most sense.
If I were a Knicks fan, and I'm not, I would be hoping that the question just answers itself. He should come off the bench. The Knicks know that he should come off the bench. They're not dumb, or at least people in that organization know he should come off the bench. And that there are all sorts of fit issues with him and Melo, and and Chandler. And I think, how many games is he going to miss? 20, 25? I mean, if they're 15-5 and just still blowing the doors off everyone, I just think, this idea that you can't lose your starting job because you make $20 million and you got injured. So if the team is playing that well, that empowers Mike Woodson, who's not a very empowered coach, but is more empowered certainly than he was last year. That empowers him to just say, you are coming off the bench, you're going to play 28 minutes a night as the sixth man, we're going to mix and match, and you're just going to deal with it because we're awesome and we were bad last year. Or you start him, and if there's a clear decline after 5 or 6 games, you pull the plug and bring him off the bench.
Is it possible 5 of the 6 best teams are in the West right now?
With the exception being Miami?
Yeah. San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Memphis, Clippers, and then, I guess.
You assume the Lakers would be good, I guess?
Yeah, I'm thinking long term.
Well, certainly, it's like if Memphis can score like this and the Clippers can defend like this, their ceilings go much higher than we sort of thought they would be at the beginning of the season, and they're in that discussion. Yes, it's definitely. I think everyone thought that was the case before the season started, and the Knicks are 4-0. But I was actually talking to Howard Beck of the Times in Brooklyn on Sunday, and he was saying he tweeted about how we can't really read much into that 4-0 start, and was like amazed by the flood of hate tweets he got back from crazy Knicks fans. But it's true. I mean, look, they beat Philadelphia twice. Philadelphia is missing Bynum. They're sort of a mess offensively. They beat a Dallas team that was playing Troy Murphy for like 25 minutes.
It was incredible.
Yeah. Well, and Sean Marion was hurt, and he's the perfect guy to defend Melo.
Yeah.
And then they beat Miami in this Hurricane game, which, Hurricane or no Hurricane, they just destroyed Miami. That means something to me. But yeah. I mean, if a reasonable person would look at that and say, it's great that they're 4-0, that's nice. Let's not anoint them like co-favorites in the East or anything.
What do you make of Minnesota? The fact that they're 5-2, I think there's a couple teams, Rick Adelman, I think, is one of those coaches and Rick Carlisle's another, where the tendency is to be like, those guys are banged up, they're not going to win, and we discount the coach. It just seems like Rick Carlisle is just not going lower than 500 ever. Just take all the players off his roster, he's going to figure it out. And maybe Rick Adelman is a little bit the same. I know they tanked down the stretch last year, but that team really seems like they like playing with each other. Rubio, I think, comes back maybe right around after the All-Star break, somewhere like that. Love comes back soon. Is that a potential fringe contender for you?
I don't think they're a fringe contender yet. The idea that they could get through the West and be a real contender is a little far-fetched to me, but they're definitely a team that if all the pieces are there and functioning pretty close to peak form, they could win a round. I mean, I thought they were absolute playoff lock if Love and Rubio were both even moderately healthy to start the season. And now they're 5-2 and they're scrapping to these crazy wins. They came back from 20-something down against the Nets in the second half. Dante Cunningham has been unbelievable for them. Shved has had a few good games now. Karolinko is totally living up to that contract. It matters that they're 5-2. It matters that they can bank these wins early, even though they've come against a so-so schedule. But they're a tough team, and if they get all the pieces back, I mean, half their roster is now hurt. Buttinger's out for 3 months. Pekovic sprained his ankle last night. They get all their pieces back. They're absolutely they could win a round. Absolutely.
The Buttinger thing was too bad, but you look at their wins. Like, they won in Brooklyn. They beat Indiana, and they beat Dallas, I guess. So they haven't really played anybody great yet.
Well, again, it's one of those like college football schedules that looked great, that looked strong, and then we realized, the Pacers aren't so good, and the Mavericks are totally banged up. I mean, you can't blame them. You only play the guys in front of you, and half their team's hurt. They're 5-2. It's totally impressive.
I will say with the Clippers, because I'm going to be the last person who admits they're a contender. I'm surprised by how big of an impact Jamal Crawford's had, because he looked like somebody who was headed in the wrong direction last year. He was terrible last year. I didn't expect him to be such a catalyst for the Clippers. And the DeAndre thing, obviously, there's no way anybody could have seen that coming. That's somebody I've watched in person probably 60, 65 times, and he has never even hinted at the way he's been playing these first 2 weeks. And he, really worked on his game. There's no question. I think kind of turned himself into I would say he's an above-average center.
Absolutely.
Would you say that? Yeah.
Yeah, he has a very good defensive player when he's on. I mean, he's not on all the time. But, yeah, go ahead. Your skepticism of the Clippers.
Well, Blake doesn't seem 100% healthy to me. I still think they have too many guys. I don't think Odom's going to help them, so I think that will play itself out. It seems like Grant Hill, like who knows when he comes back. One of the big reasons I didn't like them was I thought they just had too many guys and not enough minutes, and it seems like that might actually not be a problem for them. And maybe they will have 9 or 10 guys. Bledsoe really made a jump. I mean, you could argue that he's the best backup guard in the league right now. He's coming in and just completely changing games around on both ends.
He'll have like 1 out of every 4 games, maybe 1 out of every 3, where he comes in and is like a disaster for 6 minutes.
Right.
And Vinny pulls him. But the other 2 or the other 3, he is like a monster.
He can single-handedly change games, which is really, when you think about it, that's what you want from a bench guy. It's okay if you're a disaster every once in a while because we just take you out. But if you can come in and actually swing the game, there's only probably 4 or 5 guys in the league that can do that. They have we have a doubleheader tomorrow night on ESPN, and the second game is Heat Clippers.
Ooh.
And that's going to be, and actually the first game is Grizzlies Thunder. It is really a fantastic doubleheader. Heat Clippers will be fascinating though. And I think that's, people keep talking about the big tests for the Clippers and, Portland on Thursday night after a big win the night before against the Spurs. They came through in Portland. That was a big test. To me, it's like there's only one test. If you can beat Miami, that's your test, And so I guess like even go back to the Knicks, like just knowing that you could beat the one team that it truly matters if you could beat. That's the biggest test there is. And I think for the Clips, if they can put themselves on the map with a Miami win, now you're thinking maybe the West is wide open. Maybe they're in the driver's seat. I don't know. Are you still a San Antonio guy?
San Antonio's been a little uneven offensively, and if their defense regresses to where it was last season, they need to be just off the charts offensively. And Ginobili just night to night is not the force. Since the playoffs started last year, just hasn't been the force he was in the regular season, and that worries me. So I think it's open. Clippers Heat should be a really, really interesting game. How the Clippers respond to the Heat playing LeBron at the 4.
Ginobili gives me the same feeling I have about Pierce. You can still see the flashes. I don't know if he can do it every night anymore. And I think they're the same age, right? Aren't they both 35, 34?
Yeah, Manu's 35 or 36 now.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. All right, so what else are you working on this week?
I don't know. Nothing hard in the bag quite yet. I'll probably look at some interesting trends that come up over that are existing now and sort of last another few days and see what's behind them. But other than that, the Lakers have really worn me out the past few days.
I know. What a season. I mean, we had the Harden trade and the Phil Jackson thing will probably be the 2 biggest things that happened during the entire regular season unless there's a massive trade, and they happen within 2 weeks of each other.
I feel like I just got back from vacation yesterday, and all this crazy stuff has already happened. It's ridiculous.
It's incredible. I'm trying to think what else could possibly happen that would be on par with those 2 things. It was the most polarizing trade that I can remember, and then you have and then on top of it, you have this crazy Phil Jackson soap opera, which I'm sure is still going to play out. I forgot to mention, I do think it did remind me of the Jeremy Lin, Jim Dolan thing a little bit, where it's like when Jeremy Lin went and got that, revised offer sheet, Jim Dolan went into that mode of, oh, really? You don't know who I am? I'm Jim Dolan. and he went crazy. And I feel like maybe Jimmy Buss did that too. Oh, really? Be. Oh, my offer isn't good enough for you? Future brother-in-law? You watch this! And then just like irrationally sign Mike D'Antoni. Maybe that's what happened.
It could be.
Zach Lowe, you've been cranking it on Grantland. We appreciate it. Love reading you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
All right, we're going to call my dad and see how he feels about the Celtics. It's big family week for the BS report this week.
Hello?
Dad.
Hey, Bill, how you doing?
You're on the podcast.
I'm on the podcast.
Yeah, we were talking basketball. We want to get your take on the Celtics. How you feeling about Jeff Green?
I keep waiting for the Jeff Green of the preseason to show up.
What happened to that guy? Was he kidnapped?
I had such high expectations.
Me too.
And he was going to the basket. He was playing some pretty solid D, but he looked confident. And now I've seen him in person, and he has the dreadful deer in the headlights look. And I don't understand it. And he's settling for the outside jumper. He's not going to the basket. I didn't see the game last night, so I understand he had some good minutes in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I was calling you last night, and you weren't there.
Well, last night was the 28th annual basketball draft.
Oh, your fantasy draft.
Your fantasy draft. Your name was brought up frequently as somebody who used to take part and make fun of all the adults in the draft.
Yeah.
And
so who'd you get with the first round then?
Well, I think I might have made a mistake.
Uh-oh.
I had the 7th pick, and Westbrook was sitting there.
Yeah.
And I took Harden instead.
Oh.
So
I don't know if I agree with that choice.
I don't think I agree with it afterwards myself. So particularly when I'm driving home and listening to the game that Westbrook had last night. So. It's better than the year that I took Rod Strickland and was driving home and they announced that Rod Strickland had fractured his leg and would be out for the season.
That was the best. I almost got in a car accident when I heard that.
But I knew I made a mistake. There was so much hype about Harden. And you led the bandwagon, by the way.
Yeah, I don't think it was a mistake. I actually think they'll probably end up. The league you're in is a little less complicated, and I think they'll probably end up right around the same. Do you count field goal percentage though?
No, we go 5 categories: points, assists, rebounds, steals, and
then you probably should take a Westbrook. The worst thing with Westbrook is his field goal percentage if he says it's 3 for 30 days. Who's your center?
I took 2 centers. I took Cousins.
Oh, he just got suspended.
He did? No, it was only a game.
2 games, yeah. He threatened Sean Elliott.
Yeah, well, he'll be back. Remember, I missed the league last year because I was away.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I'm a little rusty. My backup center, I took him like in the 12th, 13th round, was Brook Lopez. He fell like a rock.
You know why? Because he's Brook Lopez.
Yeah, I know.
Why didn't you email me and ask me for like fantasy sleepers?
Yeah, well, you're a busy guy, so.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
I would have liked to have had Westbrook on my team, though.
So you've been to 2 Celtic games then?
I've been to 2 Celtic games, the 2 Friday night games.
Those are 2 bad ones.
They looked horrible in each game. It wasn't just that they looked horrible. I thought the effort was lacking. And I know that they have a lot of new players, but nobody seemed to know where anybody was when they went to make the pass. And I think I texted you that the sad part was, and I hope it's just the beginning of the season, Paul Pierce really looked slow. He was sluggish. And then I read yesterday in the paper that Doc Rivers has changed his offense so that he's not doing so much one-on-one. He's coming off picks because he's having trouble losing his defender. And
right.
that's kind of what you see on the floor. He can't get a shot off. He has no lift.
So not being able to beat his defender off the dribble and not having a shot because he has no lift, do you think those are long-term problems?
Well, there's one more problem that I didn't mention. Yeah. I took him on my fantasy team.
Oh, no, I have him too. I had him too.
He was sitting there. I had to take him.
Yeah. You always have to keep taking these guys until that one year when they fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
He looked good last night, I got to say.
He had 10 points. It's not going to help me in my fantasy league.
He looked better. It was a loud 10 points. We were just talking. I had Zach Lowe on before you, and we were talking about Pierce and Manu Ginobili are 2 guys that it just doesn't appear like they might be able to bring it every night. Oh yeah, Pierce finished 4 for 13. God.
Yeah, and that's
I feel like he had a better game than that.
It's very strange what's happening with him. He's really settling for the 3-point shot because he has no lift and he can't get his fadeaway jump shot off. And also, when he goes to the basket, he's getting a block frequently and not getting the foul call. He's settling for the 3-point shot, and his 2-point shot field goal percentage is horrific. So I just hope he's going to come around.
Yeah, but they made a big stink before the season about how his knee was doing so much better, and he was hurt last year. He's healthy now.
I don't see him limping. I think he's a little overweight, maybe because of the knee. He couldn't work out, and this kind of happened last year too. Remember, came back sluggish.
Yeah, I'm not gonna really worry about this team until February because they have so many new guys, and just like it's really hard to play basketball when you don't know. When you're not used to who you're playing with, it's just.
I don't
different.
think Doc is quite sure what rotation to settle on either. It hasn't helped that Courtney Lee. I mean, I sat there the past 2 Friday nights, and there's things that just jump at you.
Yeah.
Jeff Green and Courtney Lee have deer in the headlight look.
I'm surprised that Courtney Lee had it because he's played in the finals.
He just. It's just like he's not quite sure how to play with this team. He's not being aggressive.
Yeah.
It's like they want to fit in. They don't want to make waves. I certainly think Jeff Green has that kind of an approach right now.
What about Salinger?
What you want him to do is, go aggressively to the basket and make your mistakes at the rim.
What about Salinger?
I think he's doing fine for a rookie. He's what they somewhat predicted has occurred, where he's terrific getting the rebound, but he immediately goes up and he's being blocked. I think he needs to learn what Big Baby learned, which is you make the up fake, and then you go up, because he's a pretty good foul shooter. He just doesn't do that yet.
That was the fear with him coming out of college, was that the same shots that he was making in college now get blocked at the rim when you're in the pros.
Yeah, but he's not up faking. He's a little anxious. He's going right back up, but I'm impressed with him. He has a good way around the basket. Seems to know where the ball's going to be.
How are you feeling about Darko?
I know he had that difficult opening game where he didn't seem to be in the right place at the right time, but I'd rather see him out there when we play some of these teams that have bigger centers. I think Wilcox has been playing well. He runs the floor well. Seems to have a chemistry with Rondo.
I like Wilcox too. I wouldn't mind rolling Darko out these early games though.
Yeah, I think it's important they won these last 2 games so they get back over 500. And the crowd was down on them in the 2 Friday night games. I think there was a sense that the effort wasn't there, and I'm not sure that was the problem. I think it was really what you said. I think there's 8 or 9 new players on this team, or players who didn't play last year, and that's a lot.
Well, they have a tough stretch coming up. Utah home tomorrow. You going to that one?
I'm not going to that one.
At Brooklyn the next night. Home for Toronto, 12:30 Saturday.
Yeah, I have to admit that's not a game that
it's not on your list.
Attending.
And then at Detroit on Sunday, which is the easiest of that 4, but that's still 4 and 5 nights.
Well, they usually do well against Toronto at home. I know Toronto had a big game last night.
Triple OT.
Yeah.
All right, let's quickly move to the Pats secondary. How you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, I don't know which writer wrote it yesterday in the Globe, but he depicted it, tongue-in-cheek, of course, that yesterday morning on a white stallion riding down the main street in Foxborough was
Aqib Talib?
Yes, coming to the rescue on a white stallion, and that's kind of how you have to feel. This team needs something, and he can't be any worse than what we're seeing out there.
They really should have lost that Bills game. I feel like the Bills should have won. If I was a Bills fan, I would have walked away from that game going, man, we had that game. We gave it away. The guy fumbled on the 1 yard line.
You know, the three losses we have, the game Sunday was so similar.
Yeah, we finally won one of those stupid games.
Yeah, but the offense could have locked up the game at the end, and of course didn't. And then suddenly a quarterback is marching down the field, making every third down play and even a couple of fourth down plays, I think.
You know, it's a bad combination is no pass rush and no good guys in your secondary.
Yeah.
That's going to come back and haunt you every time. I mean, he had wide open guys, and he had time to throw. So even Ryan Fitzpatrick can make you pay if that happens.
You know, I don't know if you saw the replay on that last play. He had a guy wide open in the left corner of the end zone, too.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't even play that well, and they scored 31 points.
Yeah.
I'm worried about this Colts game. I think the Colts can move the ball. I think Luck has gotten better every single week, and they have that whole Chuck Strong thing going. It's a little worrisome. I
think we can score a lot of points on them, though. It may be a similar score game to the Buffalo game.
Yeah, it will probably be in the 30s again.
Although I still think we haven't seen a really good Brady game. Maybe you could say the game before was a good Brady game, but
the Rams game was a good Brady game, right?
Yeah, it was better certainly, but he's still missing open receivers. But he also has receivers dropping balls and.
Welker killed him a couple of times in that Bills game.
And he's still doing that thing you and I talked about, where
the duck thing. Where did the duck thing come from? It's the most annoying. It's the most annoying tick that I think a Boston athlete's had in a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know why he's doing it.
I guess you get hit. What is he, 35? Get hit so many times, you see the pass rush coming, and it's not quite coming.
It's not a great sign.
No, not a great
sign. Statistically, he's right where he was the last few years, though. I mean, right now he's at 26, 45 yards, 18 touchdowns, 3 picks.
It's the last 8 minutes of the game. It's kind of like when we talk about Adrian Gonzalez. He can't get a hit after the 7th inning. That's kind of how I'm worried about Brady in the last 6 minutes.
I don't have a great feeling about this team, but we've learned with the NFL that it really only matters what happens in December, January.
Well, the irony
you just throw the first 3 months out.
I forgot until I read in the Sunday paper they were 5-3 a year ago, and then they ran the
they got hot.
They ran 8 in a row to finish the season. So,
I still don't. It's weird. Gronkowski has 46 catches and 600 yards and 8 touchdowns, and I still don't feel like they use him enough.
Well, that's a real good point, because if you look at, they had a stat online, how many balls were thrown to each receiver and how many they caught, and only 4 balls were thrown to Gronkowski on Sunday, and he caught 3 of them. But it seems like a year ago he'd get 10 or 11 balls thrown his way.
It seems like we only throw it to him when we absolutely have to score, and then all of a sudden they throw it to him like every play.
It also could be that's why our running game is better. He's staying at the block. I don't know, but he certainly isn't a target like he was a year ago. And maybe he's not 100%, and that's why.
Last thing, did you see the Red Sox are in the Mike Napoli hunt?
Yeah.
I like Mike Napoli. It's the first Red Sox news that's gotten me excited in like a year.
I liked him 3 years ago. I'm not quite sure he's any longer in his prime.
He has these hot streaks, though.
He does.
I don't know. I like him.
I think
I got excited for that one.
He hit in the 220s last year, which was kind of worrisome. I know his big year was the year before.
It's true, but
I hate to have my hopes riding on the guy that hit 222, and he's going to be the Fenway Park hitter, and that's why we're excited.
24. I feel like he had an off year. He was a little banged up. Maybe you're buying low. I like him. He would have these hot streaks that
would you like to see him playing first base all year? Because I
really like him.
They'd want.
I genuinely like him.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he'd be good in Fenway. He always kills us, right?
Well, he always kills us. I mean, he's one of those guys that when he comes up to the plate,
you're scared.
Just feel something bad's going to happen in Fenway.
Plus, we're a small market team now because John Henry doesn't have any money left. We got to find these bargains now.
I
We
don't
have
know
our billionaire
why
owner has no money.
why didn't that get more publicity? That he had a $2.5 billion business that now has $100 million of investments left.
Nobody believed me when I was saying in July and August that they wanted to sell the team. The guy doesn't have any money left.
Yeah. I have a
Or he has
question.
some money left, but I think he wants to unload a big chunk of the team, have somebody pay him money for that chunk, but then still own the team, which
Well,
is
I'm
basically
sure he
what the
has.
Maloofs are trying to do in
They
Sacramento.
said he wasn't that involved with that particular fund, so that was that particular hedge fund. I mean, he's got other investments, hopefully.
Yeah, I shouldn't say he has no money left, but I'm saying he's definitely in a different financial position than maybe he was. And, you know, you look at the two assets he owns, which are the Red Sox and Liverpool, and both teams dramatically cut costs over the last year. I don't think it's a coincidence, but
Well, he also has a wife who's spending a lot of his money, so that's
Yeah.
not helping him out either. By the way,
That's a
you
good-
didn't answer my text message about what's the buzz about not hiring Phil Jackson out in L.A.
People are going crazy here. Everyone wanted Phil Jackson. He's
Yeah, that's
beloved
what I
here.
would assume.
He's like the Red Auerbach of LA out here.
So
people are very
puzzled,
upset.
Or are they angry? Or are they?
They're very upset. They're blaming the loser son. They think there's some sort of family thing. People are mad. They were chanting "We want Phil" at the last two home games.
Doesn't Phil Jackson still go out with the loser's son's sister?
Yeah,
That's a strange situation.
it's going to be an awesome Thanksgiving.
Oh,
But I think that's one of the reasons why he ended up not hiring him. Obviously, they don't get along.
I hope that the ESPN NBA Countdown show participants are going to talk about this.
Yeah, we have Magic on tomorrow night, so we're going to make him say stuff. But
Good.
yeah, stay tuned. Good segue, by the way. Tomorrow night, Wednesday, NBA Countdown, ESPN, 7:30.
Looking forward to watching.
Me, Magic, Wilbon, Jalen. I will say hi to you telepathically in HD. Dad, as always, a pleasure. We'll talk
All
to you
right,
soon.
take care, son.
Bye-bye.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.